Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. The text of the traditional form of the lesser ritual of the pentagram is included in the description below. The magical function of the ritual of the pentagram is to establish and strengthen the constructively creative control of the magician's true will over the inchoate contingency of their magical universe, or phenomenological life world, which is represented by the terrestrial plane of the four Platonic elements of fire, water, earth, and air, organized and directed by the fifth element of spirit, which is the refined quintessence of the four. These are the 5 points of the pentagram symbolically equilibrated by the ritual's procedures such that, according to Aleister Crowley, the magician is completely shut off from the outer and qliphothic parts of the universe. Thus insulated from distracting influences, their authentic orientation towards the mission and purpose of their life, their spiritual vocation or true will, is more clearly able to assert itself. To this end, the Golden Dawn instructional documents wisely counsel, quote, "Whenever thou shalt prepare to commence any magical work or operation, it will be advisable for thee to clear and consecrate the place by performing the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram." Unquote. The lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram and its variants are often engaged with in a performative manner. The memorized words and gestures are used without necessarily leading to a deeper comprehension of the purposes of the ritual. Familiarity with the ritual can often breed forgetfulness that is not merely a performance piece, however, but rather a profound prayer and moving meditation. Identification with the deepest core of ourself, what Crowley calls the natural fortress within the soul impregnable, is the goal of the ritual. To this end, the implications of the symbolism of the ritual should be understood and contemplated during the performance of the ritual, alongside the mindfulness and concentration called forth by its visualizations, gestures, and vocalizations. Before submitting its specific components to exegesis, some general remarks on the pentagram ritual are called for. The most basic version of the pentagram ritual, the lesser banishing, or sometimes invoking ritual of the pentagram, hereafter referred to as the LBRP, as slightly adapted from Crowley's Liber O, is as follows. Touching the forehead, say Ateh, unto thee. Touching the breast, say Malkuth, the kingdom. Touching the right shoulder, say ve-Geburah, and the power. Touching the left shoulder, say ve-Gedulah, and the glory. Clasping the hands upon the breast, say le-Olahm, amen, to the ages, amen. Turning to the east, make a pentagram, that of earth, with the proper weapon. Say, i.e. vibrate, YHVH. Turning to the south, the same, but say ADONAI. Turning to the west, the same, but say EHEIEH. Turning to the north, the same, but say AGLA. Extending the arms in the form of a cross, say, before me Raphael, behind me Gabriel, on my right hand Michael, on my left hand Uriel. For about me flames the pentagram, and in the column stands the six-rayed star. Then repeat the Kabbalistic cross that began the ritual. There is an invoking version of the ritual, and it is identical to the banishing form except for the manner of drawing the pentagrams, as explained below. However, in my opinion, the banishing form should be treated as the normative version of the ritual. The invoking version is an unnecessary, but sometimes aesthetically pleasing alternative. Both versions are equally potent to banish qliphothic influences. The choice between them is a question of preference in performance style and symbolic emphasis, rather than between qualitatively distinguishable rituals. Similarly, the clockwise or deosil direction in which the quarters are visited invokes, in contrast to an opposite movement counterclockwise or widdershins, which banishes. This simply signifies that the divine symbols deployed in the LBRP are invoked for the purpose of banishing. The ritual could just as well normatively be performed widdershins, as indeed Crowley's elaborated pentagram ritual, the Star Ruby, does. The end of both rituals is the same. In the Golden Dawn and Thelemic traditions of magic, the words given in capital letters are vibrated in a special voice. This is done with traditional names of power which are possessed of symbolic sanctity. The vocal vibration also serves to raise and direct the energy of the body at key points of the ritual. There are a number of methods of vibrating divine names, sometimes involving concurrent visualizations, but there should at least be a loud, deep, clear projection of the voice with attention. The names of God used in the LBRP are pronounced YHVH, ADONAI, EHEIEH, and AGLA, although AGLA is an abbreviation using the initial letters of the phrase Ateh, ve-Geburah, le-Olahm, ADONAI. And this, I think, should be said in the North in place of the Notiricon, AGLA. It means, Thou art mighty unto the ages, ADONAI. These four names are called tetragrammic names by SLM Mathers because they share a four-letter structure in common with the divine name YHVH. Their placement at the four elemental quarters therefore recapitulates the underlying structural pattern of the ritual as a whole. There are several visualizations associated with the ritual. These are part of the oral traditions associated with this ritual and are subject to personal modification. Therefore, they can vary greatly between individuals and communities of practice. The following is presented as a relatively standard set of suggestions. The individual magician should experiment and develop a personalized version. While making the Kabbalistic cross, visualize a current of energy in the form of flaming radiant white light descending through the body and then across the chest to form a cross. Visualize each pentagram as it is drawn in either white light or a color appropriate to the corresponding element: air yellow, fire red, water blue, earth green. While moving between the quarters, draw a circle, again in white, about the perimeter of the space at heart level. Finally, picture the archangels about the circle when calling their names. These can be relatively traditional angelic figures of giant stature, robed in their elemental colors and armed with various weapons. Raphael bears a sword for air, Gabriel a grail for water, Michael a staff for fire, and Uriel a disc for earth. The LBRP is optionally performed with the use of a ritual dagger or sword used to draw the various figures. There are several mutually compatible levels of symbolic interpretation of this action. A dagger can represent the element of air. This symbolizes Yetzirah, the Ruach, and Tifereth, which lies at the center of this layer of the tree. The dagger therefore acts to summon Yetziratic energy in the ritual for the goal of the equilibration of the elements in the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. It also shows the dominion over Asaya by the immediately higher spiritual domain of the astral light of Yetzirah. If a sword is used, this represents the Sephirah Geburah. This is the fifth Sephirah, representing the pentagram because of its 5 points, as well as the active will, spiritual chivalry, and the disruption of klephotic unbalanced forces through the true will. On another level of symbolism, the sword represents the lightning flash on the tree of life, the pure active creative energy of spirit encompassing all of the Sephirah in descending order of manifestation. It is an optional oral custom to vibrate the divine names of the quarters while making the sign of the Enterer and following the sign with the sign of silence. These two signs are paired together. The first sign is called the sign of the Enterer or projecting sign. It is made by stepping forward with one foot and vigorously thrusting out the arms at the level of the eyes, the palms held flat with fingers extended. This symbolizes the projection of the divine will of the magician out into their universe, the astral imaginary form of a current of magical energy. The magician is thereby represented as a center of light in the cosmos. As the Book of the Law says, every man and every woman is a star. This sign is also called the sign of Horus. It is associated with the active martial form of this deity. Horus is the symbol of the power of the Holy Guardian Angel in the Book of the Law. Therefore, this sign symbolizes the Holy Guardian Angel acting through the agency of the magician. The second sign is called the sign of silence. It is made by stepping back with the extended foot so that the feet are parallel. The right arm is dropped to the side while the left forefinger is placed on the closed lips, the other fingers being held loosely in a fist. It seals the current of energy released by the sign of the Emperor and represents the magician at rest, absorbed in gnosis. If the first sign is that of magic, the second represents mysticism. The sign of silence is also called the sign of Harpocrates, the infant Horus. Regarding one's attitude or orientation towards the magical performance of the LBRP or its equivalent, personal issues and problems should be set aside before the manifestation of the sacred space of the ritual. As the Chaldean oracles of Zoroaster state, quote, God, or the divine, is never so turned away from man, and never so much sendeth him new paths, as when he maketh assent to divine speculations or works in a confused or disordered manner, with unhallowed lips or unwashed feet. For of those who are thus negligent, the progress is imperfect, the impulses are vain, and the paths are dark. Unquote. Much attention has been paid in the explanation of these rituals to the pentagram itself as a symbol. Just as important, however, are the other features of the ritual, along with the way the movements and visualizations define the space of the performance into which the pentagram is inserted and integrated as a component of a fuller ritual procedure. We can break the general structure of the LBRP into a few basic components, which we will discuss in turn. These are, first, the Kabbalistic cross, and then second, calling the quarters, which contains the sub-elements of the pentagrams, the fourfold divine names, the angelic array, and the cross and circle conjoined. First, Kabbalistic cross. The Kabbalistic cross is self-contained and can be performed as its own ritual. Often, it also interlocks within the larger framework of the LBRP. It's used by the Golden Dawn and subsequently adapted for Thelemic practice, is based on an interpretation of a passage from Eliphas Levi's Doctrine and Ritual of High Magic. He wrote, quote, "The sign of the cross adopted by Christians does not belong to them exclusively. This also is Kabbalistic and represents the oppositions and tetratic equilibrium of the elements. We see by the occult versicle of the Lord's Prayer, which we have cited in our doctrine, that it was originally made after two manners, or at least that it was characterized by two entirely different formulae, one reserved for priests and initiates, the other imparted to neophytes and the profane. For example, the initiate said, raising his hand to his forehead, 'For thine,' then added 'is,' and continuing as he brought down his hand to his breast, 'the kingdom,' then to the left shoulder, and 'the mercy,' then clasping his hands, he added, 'in the generating ages. Tibi sunt Malkuth, et Geburah, et Hesed per Aeonis,' a sign of the cross which is absolutely and magnificently Kabbalistic, which the profanations of Gnosticism have lost completely to the official and militant church. This sign made after this manner should precede and terminate the conjuration of the four elements." Unquote. According to Carrie Seeline's genealogical examination of this passage, the occult versicle, concluding some versions of the Lord's Prayer, as cited by Levi, is a grammatically garbled reverse translation into Hebrew of a phrase ultimately derived from 1 Chronicles 29:11, quote, "Yours, Lord, are greatness, might, splendor, triumph, and majesty, yes, all that is in heaven and on earth. To you, Lord, belong kingship and preeminence above all." Unquote. The verse names the Sephiroth in descending order on the tree of life according to the medieval Iberian Kabbalistic tradition that produced the Zohar. Levi's Rosicrucian reception of this important Kabbalistic formula was then adapted and further revised by the Golden Dawn, from whence it has passed into current general usage, recited during the performance of the Kabbalistic cross in the traditional version of the LBRP. There is also a rectified approach, where the source text of the occult versicle, the Hebrew text of 1 Chronicles 29:11, is recited in place of Levi's paraphrase, and the sign of the cross is expanded into a gesture, ritually placing all 10 Sephiroth upon the body. In both versions of the pentagram ritual, the Kabbalistic cross is made on the body, signifying that the magical potencies of one's own body-mind are the objective correlate of the symbols and meanings described by the ritual gestures. The Kabbalistic cross represents the manifestation of the tree of life on and as the human body. in correlation with the Hermetic concept of the mystical unity of the macrocosm and the microcosm. The Tree of Life traditionally represents the form of Adam Kadmon, the primordial body of God that is simultaneously the archetype of the human form. The symbolism of the Kabbalistic cross expresses the doctrine of anthropocosmos, that the exalted physical and imaginal body of the magician is the body of God. The shape of the Tree of Life can be considered as forming a triple-armed Templar cross, which is sometimes depicted accompanying the Hierophant in the tarot. The three horizontal arms of the Hierophant's cross are the reciprocal paths of Dalet, linking Chokmah and Bina, Teth, connecting Hesed with Geburah, and Pei, linking Netzach and Hod. These three letters add to 93, the value of Thelema will and Agape love. Meanwhile, the middle pillar of the Tree of Life is the vertical bar of the Triple Cross, and the four Sephiroth it comprises, Kether, Tiferet, Yesod, and Malkuth, together add to 26, which is the value of the divine fourfold name YHVH, representing the four worlds and the four elements. Interpreted, the Hierophant's cross symbolizes the creative current of the law of Thelema, which is love under will, expressed through the four worlds, revivifying and resacralizing the plane of the elements. Which side of the body, one's left or right, the Sephiroth of the pillars of mercy and severity correspond, differs in the Jewish Kabbalistic tradition from the interpretation followed in the Golden Dawn. According to Flying Roll 9, originally entitled Right and Left and retitled The Diagrams by Regardi, the magician treats the orientation of the Tree of Life diagram as if they were looking in a mirror, so that Geburah and the pillar of severity that are depicted on the left side of the tree in the diagram correspond to the magician's right-hand side, and vice versa for Hesed and the pillar of mercy. The text of Flying Roll 9 reads, quote, "As confusion is found to exist with regard to the right and left pillars of the Sephiroth on the Tree of Life in relation to the right and left sides of a man, you must note that in every diagram and picture, the right-hand side of the observer is next to the pillar of mercy, Chokmah, Hesed, and Netzach, while the pillar of severity is on the observer's left hand. Yet when you apply the Tree of Life to yourself, your right side, arm, and leg represent the side of strength and severity, Bina, Geburah, and Hod, and your left side refers to the pillar of mercy, so that when you look at the diagram, you are looking, as it were, at a man facing you, that your right side faces his left. His merciful side forms the right-hand pillar in front of you, so that it is as if you looked at yourself in a mirror. So in making the Kabbalistic cross on your breast, it is correct to touch the forehead and say, Ateh, thou art, the heart, Malkuth, right shoulder, ve-Geburah, left shoulder, ve-Gedulah, and with the fingers clasped on the breast, say, le-Olahm, amen." Unquote. However, in traditional Jewish observance, the mirror analogy does not apply. As depicted in the visual symbol of the Tree of Life, leftness is one of the basic attributes of Geburah, and the pillar of judgment, or Din, and severity, just as rightness is associated with Hesed and the pillar of mercy. Therefore, when placed upon the magician's body, Geburah is on the left-hand side, and Hesed is on their right-hand side, along with their corresponding pillars. The rectified version of the LBRP follows this usage. Because it follows the order of the lightning flash down the tree, it names Hesed before Geburah on the body, unlike the order of the Eliphas Levi occult versicle adapted in the traditional, or Golden Dawn, version of the LBRP. Therefore, it turns out that in both the traditional and rectified versions, one first touches the right shoulder and then the left after touching the forehead. There is a further Thelemic oral tradition that while making the Kabbalistic cross, the name of Aiwas is inserted into the recitation while touching the heart. In the traditional LBRP, this comes between the words Ateh and Malkuth, and in the rectified LBRP, the name can be added immediately after the invocation of Tiferet while still touching the heart. This is the name of Aleister Crowley's holy guardian angel and the narrator of the Book of the Law. This entity, or psychic totality, or both, functions magically as a symbol of the mediation or communication between Thelemites and the divine, however culturally defined, through the book of the law and its message. It is appropriate to place this name at the heart because the heart is the point of contact between the self and the divine through will and love. Therefore, it is an apt location to signify the awakening of the Thelemic Gnosis. Additionally, the heart is associated with the Sephira Tifereth, which in the AA system is the place where the personal knowledge and conversation between the adept and their angel first occurs. There is an oral tradition among Thelemites that upon achieving knowledge of the name of one's own holy guardian angel, one should substitute this name for that of Aiwass when making the Kabbalistic cross. If one's relationship to one's angel makes this appropriate, then this can certainly be a meaningful part of the ritual, as well as a way of personalizing the performance to one's own initiatory current. The name of one's angel is an intimate matter, however, and it is customary for reasons of magical privacy to continue using the word Aiwass when performing the ritual in public. A further powerful visualization that can be done while performing the Kabbalistic cross is to see oneself as growing larger in stature. One should imagine oneself expanding during the ritual to tremendous proportions at the limits of one's imagination. This exercise at expansion of consciousness seems to have archetypal resonance, and its simplicity belies its effectiveness. According to Israel Regardie, quote, "The prime factor towards success is to imagine that the astral form is capable of expansion, that it grows tall and high until at length it has the semblance of a vast angelic figure, whose head towers amongst the distant stars of heaven. When this imaginative expansion of consciousness produces the sense that the height is enormous, with the earth as a tiny globe revolving beneath the feet, that above the head should be perceived or formulated a descending ray of brilliant light. As the candidate marks the head and then the breast, so should this brilliance descend, even down to his feet, a descending shaft of a gigantic cross of light. The act of marking the shoulders right and left while vibrating the Sephirotic names traces the horizontal shaft of the cross, equilibrating the light within the sphere of sensation." Unquote. Regardie's description applies to the traditional version of the Kabbalistic cross and can be simply modified to suit the rectified approach. Tibetan Vajrayana techniques often involve the expansion of one's visualized body or the body of a deity to giant proportions. Sometimes the expanded body becomes sacrificed in some manners in the practice of chode. These procedures resonate with mythologies of a primal giant who is slain by some deity and cut in two to create the earth and sky. Odin and Ymir are examples from Norse myth, as well as Marduk and Tiamat in Babylonian folklore. There's also the myth of Purusha, the primordial man referenced in the Rig Veda, whose death at the birth of the universe is symbolically recapitulated in the Vedic cult of the fire sacrifice. Finally, there is the titular character of James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake. A basic idea held in common by these traditions is that of the giant's body representing the divine pleroma or chaos preceding the ordering of the universe, which sacrificially passes away so that the world can come into being and or be sustained. These are powerful associations when one considers that the sign of the cross is being made on the body during these visualizations. One is identifying oneself with the universal fertility mythos of the dying and rising god of regeneration and renewal, with all its associated spiritual depths. Next, calling the quarters. The quarters are the four directions to which pentagrams, divine names, and angels are invoked. The general attribution is to the four elements: east air, south fire, west water, and north earth, with the magician in the center standing for spirit. In his paper, Notes on the Lesser Ritual of the Pentagram, Aleister Crowley proposes that the shape of the cross, geometrically implied by the establishment of the quarters, represents the placement of the magician performing the LBRP at the intersection of the paths of Samek and Pei on the Tree of Life, equidistant between Tifereth and Yesod and Hod and Netzach. This is the point of equilibrium of the lower section of the Tree of Life, corresponding to the grades of the outer college of the AA. This positioning represents how the man of earth, ascending in their aspiration along the path of Samek towards the knowledge and conversation with their higher divine self in Tifereth, must cross the path of Pei, the tower, symbolizing the ordeal elemental equilibrium, or the alignment of the physical, emotional, cognitive, and intentional aspects of the phenomenal self to the true will. It It should be noted that the symbolism of Samek and Pei is in parallel to, but also independent of the system of correspondences associating specific elements and archangels to the quarters, which are not directly based on the Sephiroth that surround that point on the Tree of Life, but rather on the climactic qualities of the terrestrial winds that are traditionally said to blow from the different compass directions during the seasons of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. This system of the four winds that provides the correspondences of the elements to the quarters for rituals that work with the elemental symbolic forces below Tifereth on the Tree of Life, just as the zodiacal astral correspondences, East Leo Fire, South Taurus Earth, West Aquarius Air, and North Scorpio Water, are used in magic operations such as the hexagram rituals that pertain to the planetary mysteries that orbit about the sun of Tifereth. According to Ptolemy's Tetrabiblos, which is the primary surviving source text for classical astrology, the east wind is dry and associated with autumn, the south wind is hot and corresponds to summer, the west wind is moist and brings the spring, and the north wind is cold and wintry. The Golden Dawn system of elemental directional correspondences is derived from these relations. The moist western wind correlates with water, and the hot southern wind with fire, with air to the dry eastern wind and earth to the cold northern wind. As the magician passes to each quarter, they first inscribe a pentagram. The form of the pentagram has 5 points, representing again the basic archetype of the ritual, the 4 elements governed by spirit. It is drawn with a unicursal or single unbroken line, which shows the unity of that spirit with its elemental emanations. The figure fits exactly inscribed within a circle, also demonstrating its dependence from the divine unity. It is in the shape of a human being, the points representing the head and limbs, and showing that the symbol represents the aspects of the magician's own being. It is in the traditional shape of a heavenly star. As it is written in the Book of the Law, every man and every woman is a star. The 5 points also represent the 5th Sephirah Geburah, showing the active power of the magician over the elements of their being in service of their Gnostic self-consciousness. Additionally, the Egyptians used a 5-pointed star as a symbol of the goddess Nuit, whose body is the universe within which the star self of the magician orbits. Nuit, in the Book of the Law, states that her symbol is the 5-pointed star with a circle in the middle, and the circle is red. The symbolism of the pentagram therefore serves as a visual resume of the larger ritual within which it is a component. Placing the pentagram each of the 4 quarters shows the elementals or other forces of those quarters, the guidance of spirit over them, as embodied by the magician. The divine guidance of spirit is explicitly encoded in the pentagram's geometry. The line segments of the pentagram are in exact extreme and mean proportion to each other. This means that in a line containing 2 segments, the proportion of the shorter segment to the longer segment is the same proportion as the longer segment to the whole line. This can be interpreted as symbolizing that the relationship of the microcosm to the daimonic plane of the elements mirrors the relationship of the macrocosm to the microcosm, or as Ebony Ampu concisely characterized the relationship, we are an angel to our demons and a demon to our angel. In the Golden Dawn system, particular elements are assigned to the points of the pentagram. These correspondences are based on the cross formed in the heavens by the positions of the fixed signs of the zodiac. Leo in the east for fire, Taurus in the south for earth, Aquarius in the west for air, and Scorpio in the north for water. When this cross is tilted to make an X and laid over the shape of the lower 4 points of the pentagram, it gives the correspondences of these points to the elements, with earth on the lower left, air on the upper left, water on the upper right, and fire on the lower right. The elements are invoked or banished depending on how the pentagram is drawn in relation to the elemental points. The rule is that a pentagram whose first line is drawn towards the point of its particular element invokes that element, while a pentagram whose first line is drawn away from the point of a particular element banishes that element. When geometrically possible, as in the case of the invoking and banishing pentagrams of earth and fire, one draws towards or away from the topmost point of spirit. Therefore, for example, the banishing pentagram of earth that is typically used in the LBRP is inscribed by beginning at the lower right-hand point, corresponding to earth, and then, this is the lower left-hand point, corresponding to earth, and then drawing away from that point towards the topmost point of the pentagram. Likewise, the invoking pentagram of earth begins at the topmost point and is drawn first towards the lower left point. In the case of the invoking and banishing pentagrams of air and water, the first line of the figure is drawn across the line segment formed by the upper left and upper right points of the pentagram, corresponding to air and water respectively. Because, as the Golden Dawn document informs us, air and water having much in common, and because one is the container of the other, therefore the invoking sign of the one and the banishing sign of the other countercharge in the pentagram. The exceptions to this general rule are the two pentagrams for spirit in its active and passive modes. These use the two line segments that are not used by the other elemental pentagrams. These are the segments connecting the two active elements of fire and air and the two passive elements of water and earth. To invoke or banish spirit in its active phase, the pentagram is begun with the segment connecting fire and air, with the line sloping upwards to invoke and downwards to banish. To invoke or banish spirit in its passive phase, the pentagram is begun with the segment connecting water and earth, with the line sloping upwards invoking and downwards banishing. In the lesser ritual of the pentagram, the banishing, or sometimes invoking, pentagram of earth is used because this element traditionally can be understood as containing or being a consolidation of the other three. In the Sefer Yetzirah, for example, earth is the result of a consolidated combination of the three elements of air, fire, and water, represented by the three mother letters Aleph, Shin, and Mem, respectively. Therefore, in the context of the ritual, the use of the earth pentagram serves as a stand-in for all the other elemental pentagrams, whose presence is thereby implied. Following the inscription of the pentagram in each of the quarters, a divine name is vibrated to charge and sanctify the proceedings. In the East, the Tetragrammaton YHVH is the primary name of the divine in the Hebrew Scriptures, whose tetratic form signifies the expression of the creative spirit throughout the four worlds. The significance of its magical formula is developed by Crowley in the third chapter of Magic in Theory and Practice. In the South, ADONAI, or Lord, is the word used as a stand-in for YHVH when observant Jews recite Torah and come to the Tetragrammaton, which is considered too holy to be directly pronounced. Its formula is explored in the Thelemic Holy Book Liber 65, especially in the fifth chapter. EHEIEH can be translated I am that I am, and is the divine name revealed to Moses at the burning bush in the book of Exodus. Finally, the expression Ateh Gevor le-Olahm ADONAI, which Carrie Seeline translates as "You are infinitely strong, ADONAI," remarking, quote, "This strength being that of generation, regeneration, fertility, the power of giving life to dead matter, of causing wind and rain which fertilize the earth." From the daily synagogue liturgy, the Amidah prayer, or 18 blessings, a prayer which is said during communion with the divine at the peak of the service. This name also appears traditionally in amulets and Shivati plaques, frequently combined and permutated with ADONAI and YHVH, unquote. Following the magician's transit of the quarters, they return to the center of the circle, representing the place of spirit. From this place of balanced force, they invoke the four archangels, which are visualized as presiding over their relevant quarters, guarding and protecting the sacred space circumscribed by the drawing of the circle. All four worlds are thereby placed in balanced equilibrium in relation to each other. As the divine names invoke Atziluth, the archangels correspond to Bria. The pentagrams pertain to the direction of the elements from the next higher astral and visionary plane of Yetzirah, and the performance of the ritual itself in a physical space relates to Asiya. The names of the four traditional archangels all bear the suffix Aleph, Lamed, or El, the divine name that is also the esoteric title of the Book of the Law. Interpreted based on the Hebrew meaning of each name's prefix, the archangels are Raphael, meaning El's healing, Gabriel, or the strength of El, Michael, El's messenger, and Uriel, the light of El. In the traditional LBRP, Raphael is in the east, Gabriel in the west, Michael in the south, and Uriel in the north. In the rectified version of the LBRP, the correspondences of the archangels to the quarters are slightly altered from the Golden Dawn's usage, with Gabriel appearing in the east and Raphael in the west. Carrie Seeline writes that this change is, quote, aligned with Midrash Bamidbar Rabbah on the placement of angels around the desert tabernacle, and modified according to Thelemic placement of Uriel in the north associated with earth. The angels also appear in Jewish liturgy in the bedtime prayers, with Uriel, the light, in front, Raphael healing in the rear, Michael bearing divine messages on the right, Gabriel, power or strength, wielding a sword on the left. The bedtime liturgy assumes the angels keep their positions no matter which way you turn, so are not based on cardinal directions, unquote. This change in the rectified version serves to align the archangels more clearly with elemental correspondences that resonate with their mythological roles in the Jewish, Christian, Islamic tradition. Gabriel is God's herald, who bore the annunciation of the divine conception to Mary in the Gospels, and who delivered the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad. They are therefore fittingly associated with the element of air, the medium of the vibrations of spoken discourse. Raphael appears in the apocryphal book of Tobit, an ancient Greek novel included in the Catholic Bible, as the bearer of healing magic, hence their correspondence with the medicinal qualities of the emotional intuitive aspects of water. Michael is the warrior angel who fought with the rebel Lucifer, casting him out of heaven, and they are therefore fittingly attributed to martial fire. Finally, Uriel is the guardian of the gates of the Garden of Eden, which relates to the element of earth in its fully spiritualized mode. When the LBRP is completed, the circular movement of the magician about the four quarters creates the symbol of circle and cross conjoined. This is an important ensign of Thelemic Magick. The prototype is the symbol of the rosy cross, the emblem of the Rosicrucian movement. The Thelemic understanding of the rose cross is that it represents the union of subject and object in samadhi through the embrace of Nuit and Hadith, which represent the synthesis of the universal and particular. The cross is the unique point event of personal consciousness, extended upon the rose circle of the infinity of possible experiences of that consciousness. The cross is life and the rose light. Their union is of the nature of love expressed through liberty. Therefore, the completion of the Pentagram ritual implicitly discloses the gnosis represented by the next higher level of the Tree of Life, whose meaning is symbolized by the hexagram, and its associated ritual which can optionally follow the LBRP's performance to facilitate an even more thorough banishing regimen. Love is the law, love under will.